They told me, early and often, that I was replaceable. It started as a joke, an offhand line after a quarterly review, tossed across the conference room like office candy. We can always find someone to do Ethan's job. They laughed. I laughed too. I've learned to laugh when the knife is buttered with a smile. It's safer that way. I'd been at Alder and Finch for 7 years, long enough to know the hum of the HVAC in the seventh floor bullpen, long enough to know where the good pens lived, long enough to have trained half the people now sitting behind me at their monitors. I'd been the one people tapped when a production release went sideways at 3 in the morning. I'd been the one who stayed and rewired shipping flows, who took late night calls to coach new hires through failures, and saved clients with a steady voice. I liked the work. I liked the people. I told myself that was why I stayed. Then the reorg came. Reorg is corporate speak for, we're going to rearrange the deck chairs until somebody falls off. They moved my team into a dotted line to Marcus, the new VP who wore bespoke suits and had zero patience for nuance. Marcus loved metrics that could be summarized on a slide deck and swore by fast pivots, little circuses of scrappy execution that left people breathless and exhausted, but impressed the board. At first, Marcus and I were polite. He'd dip into our Monday stand-ups, throw out a challenging question, and leave like a whirlwind. I answered. I pushed back when I needed to. I learned to frame things for his slides. Concise impact, projected numbers, the three-liner that could survive a shareholder's gaze. Then the marginalization started small and clever. Projects redirected, approval loops tightened, cross-functional requests rerouted through his office. I was asked to take ownership of problems I hadn't created while being excluded from decision calls where my presence actually mattered. Emails I'd sent for months were suddenly over-communicating. The praise that used to be public became quiet, sometimes whispered on the way out of a boardroom. My performance metrics were recalibrated into a comparison against benchmarks that didn't exist when I'd been hired. HR gave me a packet when the discipline showed up. Performance improvement plan, it said, as if I'd performed inadequately in anything but kindness. The plan was a legal-looking schedule of objectives, vague, impossible to measure goals, arranged in boxes with a deadline that left no room for variances, no room for the messy, unpredictable work we did. You'll be fine, my manager, Jenna, said, when she handed me the packet. Her voice had the sound of someone breaking a small animal off a leash. I could have fought. I tried for a while. I sat with HR and explained context. I sent the emails that documented months of work. I asked for concrete examples. The examples that came back were petty. Not attending a meeting because I was resolving a live incident. A deliverable delayed by a vendor we had no leverage over. The company had made a choice, and the process was a tidy thing to make the choice look fair. I made my resignation when the last straw came, which was ridiculous, because the last straw was really 19 microstraws over 19 months. The last one was a Tuesday, when Marcus presented a roadmap at an all-hands and took for himself credit for a system my team had rebuilt in a year, of late nights and whiteboard diagrams. He described our work as cleaning up legacy mistakes, eyeing the C-suite like a man pointing to a house he'd helped fund. He used my diagram during the Q&A and said, smiling, "We'll have Ethan roll this out," in a tone that meant nothing would get rolled out except his narrative. That evening, I walked past the row of pods where the team lingered after hours. I didn't knock. I sat on the staircase landing and called Sarah, who was the unofficial soul of the team, the one who brought leftovers and made sure birthdays were not silent. "You okay?" she asked without preamble. She'd been my mentee once upon a time. Later she became my peer. "Not really," I said. I told her everything. The caravan of small humiliations, the PIP, the way my work got footnoted in executive decks. I told her I'd started talking with a recruiter, that I had a call with a small company who wanted to build the thing we'd all been trying to build for years, without portfolio politics, without the eyebrow lifts and spin. There was a silence that was not small. Then she said, "We built that system because you taught us how to think about the whole thing. We'd follow you anywhere." You've read that line in movies. In movies, it's a declaration that arrives like fireworks. In real life, it was ordinary and scary and painfully generous. It was a promise and an ultimatum both. I did not want to be the reason people lost paychecks. That night, I brought pizza to the office and sat with people I'd managed and mentored. No pitch, just presence. We drank cheap sparkling water and talked about clients, messy PR, the time someone accidentally committed debug logging to production. We talked until the janitor clicked on the lights, and finally, until we had an idea. It started small. Sarah said she'd been thinking of leaving for a while. Michael, who ran QA and could find a weird bug in 3 keystrokes, admitted he'd sent out resumes last month. Jenna, my direct manager, had her own brand of fury. HR had handed her a smaller version of the same packet. The neat little threads that had kept us wrapped around the company were frayed, and for once they snapped in the same direction. We didn't storm the executive floor. We didn't post resignations all at once as a theatrical flourish. We were smarter than that. This kind of exit, I'd learned, requires timing and a plan. I wrote my resignation on a Friday and walked it into Marcus's office on Monday. He was surprised, not by the content he'd prepared me months ago, whether he knew it or not, but by the expression on my face. He tried to be magnanimous. "We'll miss you, Ethan," he said, reaching for the script. He asked whether he could be a reference. He offered to work on a counteroffer that wanted me back as an adjunct to his structure. I said no. I handed him the paper. I left. That afternoon, I went to Jenna's desk and dropped a folder with a single simple line. "My resignation is effective 2 weeks from today. If you're thinking about your next step, call me." There were no grand speeches, only real planning. She had a choice: stay and watch the P-up grind her down, or move with the people she trusted. By the end of the day, 2 of my direct reports had told their managers they were resigning. By the end of the week, 3 more had joined. My inbox started to fill with terse messages from HR, asking for exit interviews, and asking whether the reason for the mass departures had anything to do with management. The answer, when delivered in a conference room with a recorder on the table, was simpler than the table looked. Policy exists to protect people, but often those policies are applied asymmetrically. We didn't make a statement, we made careers. Sarah and Michael and 2 others took roles at the company that had been courting me. A lean startup with an idea, and the humility to say we don't know everything out loud. Jenna took a product head position at a firm across town. A few people took the quiet route. Contractors, senior engineers, people who would come and go when their non-compete allowed. But the core moved like a riverbed shifting. The people who'd made the old place breathe left together. The day we left, the office felt like an emptied theater. Desks were cleared, monitors turned off with a finality I'd never noticed before. The remaining people, the ones who stuck around, had faces I didn't recognize or had only seen the color of from a distance. Marcus stood in the corridor and tried on sympathy like a suit. We offered him nothing. He had made his choices. It's cliché to imagine a gloating walk of vindication. I did not burn anything. I locked my desk, put the last of my pens in a drawer, and walked out with a cardboard box that carried 2 mugs, a plant, and a stack of printed ticket reports that I would never need again. We all met in the lobby. Nobody shouted. There were handshakes, a couple of hugs, and the blunt, overwhelming sense of a shared leap. The new company treated us like a miracle. They gave us space to fail, and we failed a few times in the most lovable ways. Late nights, arguments about product versus architecture, the inevitable fight over what color the logo should be. We rebuilt the culture we'd missed, meetings that started on time, people encouraged to take sick days, no one's idea credited to an executive with a better tie. The product we built was not perfect, it was ours. As for Alder and Finch, the immediate aftermath was slow and brutal. Projects missed their launch windows. Clients who'd been used to our personal responses started to get canned replies. Marcus sent out the memo with his polished optimism, but the cadence of a company falters when the people who know the scaffolding leave. There were interim hires and consultants. There were restructuring emails that meant headcount would be adjusted in the next quarter. I heard from a friend still there that morale dropped and that the company struggled for months with the exact same problems we'd fixed in our way. People ask me sometimes whether this was revenge. I tell them no, because revenge is empty and loud. What happened was solidarity. We had all been asked to pretend things were fine. We all decided we were not going to do that anymore. The moment of leaving didn't feel like a spectacle. It felt like honoring the work that we had done and the people we had become in the process. There were costs. There are always costs. Some people we loved didn't leave. They stayed because of mortgages, because of family obligations, because the risks were too high. I carry the memory of their faces when I walk into our new office. They come into my head like a ledger column, what we won, what we lost. On quiet afternoons, when the room thins and the code compiles on the first try, I'll find myself thinking about the old glass walls and the way they refracted the afternoon light into neat lines. I'll think about Marcus, who wanted to orchestrate everything from above and refused to learn the things he could not see. I'll think about Jenna, who found herself at a crossroads and chose life over loyalty to a brand that ate people slowly. I'll think about the team, Sarah, who is now running our front-end architecture like a conductor, Michael, whose attention to detail has saved us from embarrassing rollouts, the others who slipped in quietly, now chief engineers and product owners. If there is a moral to this, it is stubborn and small. People are not replaceable in the way spreadsheets assume. Names are not interchangeable. Trust matters. Leadership is not about owning a roadmap and putting your name at the top. It's about growing the people who will carry it forward. Years later, Alder and Finch exist still. Corporations are like cities. They survive because they morph. Marcus moved on. Of course, he moved somewhere new, trying to prove himself again. People leave with their scars and their pride. As for us, we kept building. One morning, a year after the Exodus, a young engineer stopped by my desk with a notebook full of diagrams. "How did you get everyone to leave with you?" she asked, in that earnest way people have when they want a shortcut. I smiled and told her the truth. "You don't get anyone to leave with you," I said. "They leave because of the way you treat them when the lights go out. You can't force loyalty. You can only earn it. And when the lights go out, you either light a candle together or you stand alone." She frowned, considered, and then flipped open her notebook to a fresh page. We spent the afternoon sketching out systems and company cultures and what it would mean to do better. It turned out, as it usually does, that building the thing you want to end up with takes longer and costs more than you expect. It also oddly got easier with people who'd already walked through fire with you. The day everyone left wasn't a coup. It was a series of small, deliberate acts. A resignation letter, an honest conversation, a job offer accepted, a desk cleared, a hand outstretched. It was messy. It was human. It was, in the end, the only reasonable response to being told you were replaceable, and realizing, finally, you were not.